this way. Okay. Because of we are having different culture, we are
Yes,
having
yeah.
different one.
Yes.
That you have official kind of statements. Yeah. That's not what I'm looking for. Yeah, that's also is another important point. Also, sometimes when our studies sometimes they are really very different, and they also the outcome and form are
Yeah.
different. Sometimes when you go community can just tend to give you the wrong answer. Probably thinking that this guy is coming from yeah. But if you go like he's saying, I think it's really nice. I remember in 2000 and start no, 2013. I wanted to do a study on motorcycles here.
Okay.
Yeah, and then from the hospital back outside also to know what is causing the accident, the speed, the helmet wheeling, also everything from motorcycle. And when I went there, because of I was dressed very well and people were just telling to give me because of I wanted to formulate my question. That's the problem I administrated to them. And they were just giving me the wrong answer.
Yeah.
And then next time I went there for the t-shirt and and then at a different area. I was like them. Also, I was with a motorcyclist with a helmet in my hand. They thought to come bring me also I was one of them.
Yeah.
I get totally different answers.
Yes.
So,
Dr. JC, that's a very good observation. There's what you call power dynamics in even in British culture. If they know that you are working in a hospital, they they put you up there and they don't want to give you honest answers. And so the attire that we were wearing yesterday for the conference in our suits,
yeah.
even in the UK, if I'm going to the community, I don't wear that. I wear a t-shirt, I wear jeans, I wear sneakers, trainers, and then I sometimes go to bars and then I sit with people and talk with them. So it's about you don't expect the community to go to you. You have to go to the community yourself. So yeah. So that unfortunately, this is the limitation. I can give you ideas of how to think of CEI, but I can't make Rwanda specific recommendations because you are the experts of your communities. We can support you if you have questions, but I can't tell you this is how you do it if you are if you're going in Kirambo. I-
Chirango.
Well, we are going to Kirambo on Thursday. So, I'm not going to go through this, but it's a decision that says, how will you know if what you're doing is quality research or CEI? So the first question is for data. If you're doing data analysis, oops, you need to get ethics. Is it not for data analysis? No, that's CEI. And then you say, will you publish it in a CEI journal? Not, then ask, will you quote the person? It's not, you can just. However, when you publish in a CEI journal, yes, obtain. And I think that if you do CEI, you probably want to. So, probably get, yes. There's the idea of publishing, getting this. That's how it works. So that's very so that's quite challenging if you get ethics after you. So thank you for putting it like that, Professor Rossi. So what I tell is, women. One last example. Can you do qualitative research and CI in the same project? The answer is yes. And I'll give you an example. Unfortunately, my example is I did, so it's not with GSU, but hopefully it can give you. So this was early on in the pandemic, and we were collaborating with another university. What you call a human challenge trial, where you send someone SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID, to see on humans. So you get healthy individuals with COVID, and then you isolate them for 3 weeks in the hospital and see what happens. For context, this was in around October when the vaccines weren't out yet. So as you can imagine, that's and so we said, okay, we need to have qualitative research on what people think about but also we need to do CEI on this. The term we use, for, by the way, in the UK for CEI is PPI, patient and public involvement, but it's the same. So, what qualitative things? We had an online survey where there were about 2,000 people responding, gauged what they knew about human genetics, uh, perspectives on if they wanted to take part or if their family members wanted to take part, would they be comfortable with that, and their demographic. That's qualitative research. And then we also did focus groups. We also had one specifically for BAME individuals. It's a term not used in the UK anymore, but BAME stands for Black Asian Minority. Because in the pandemic, there was data that says if you're non-white basically and living in the UK, you're more likely to get sick from COVID. Uh, and so we said, I think we need to have a specific focus group for ethnic individuals within the. So that's the qualitative research. Now, what CEI did we do? By the way, this has been published, so if you want to read the paper, I can send the paper. We did a discussion group. See, it's not a focus group, it's a discussion group. Okay? And what did they comment on? They commented on the text of the online survey. So the online survey was about 50 plus questions. Fortunately, we actually had the budget to pay to answer that survey. We were given a small amount of so people commented on, was the wording right in the questionnaire? Were there any offensive words? And also prior to uh, participants were actually shown a video information sheet. So instead of reading, they could read it. There was also a video, and you can watch it on YouTube. It's an explainer video. So we asked them to comment. So the input they gave was not data, but suggestions to improve. Then we also had a special website for the human rights trial, and they commented. text of the website. Whether it's, years, but in general, they agreed that the human challenge trial should take place. And fortunately, it has taken place, and I think it's ready. But if you want to find out more about the qualitative research and the CEI that we did, the paper is send all of these to Emmanuel. So, question, I mentioned this. Can people in your CEI group be also a participant in the same research? The answer is no, conflict of interest. If they say, um, is this question right or wrong? And then they say, oh no, I don't like that. And then they're going to be the same people who answer the survey. It's conflict of interest. But can people who have joined the trial, can they be your CEI in the future? The answer is yes, possibly. But either it's a different trial or they should done being a participant before they become your CEI. Yes. I think we should have CEI before the trial. Okay. So they have to be different people. They have to be completely different people. Yeah. Oh yeah, sure. No, no problem.
You said that I think the trial you can you just mentioned the different people.
Mhm.
If I say, can they be different people at different time,
Okay. So, sorry. Can they be the same people in?
same people, but it's different uh,
So the same people doing CEI or
CI,
participating?
the
CEI.
participant, and then do it in a different period or
I'm trying to understand. Do CEI, are they and join a trial?
the trial,
Okay.
and then the back in a different.
That's a bit challenging and tricky. I, I'm not going to give you a definite answer, but the thing is, if they are CEI in one trial, they can participate in another trial. For example, let's say you have a person who has had cataract surgery and you're doing CEI on cataract research. But he also has a heart problem and is cardiology. He can join the cardiology as a participant, but can do CEI for the cataract because he's not participating in the. So if they're completely different, if there's overlap between the two trials, yes.
Is
Yeah.
what's the CIE?
Mm.
You are going to be CIE for
Oh, okay.
that will not be possible because you focus, you target a community because of unless you do the research, the same research every time.
So, again, I can't answer for the Rwandan context, but in the UK, you have a group hospital where you have a database of about 300 signed up to join CEI. And some of them are actually, we call like members. They've been consistently helping out in the different. Um, if you need specific people, and let's say the condition is very specific, you probably want different. Because for example, you have a person, let's say, really obvious example. Let's say you're doing research on cesarean sections. Obviously, you don't have value. Maybe you can have one man because the man also experiences stress when he's taking the woman to the hospital. Maybe. Most of your CI will probably be women. So in a sense, it's very context dependent. So uh, you want to have people with the right experience. Yes. Sure. Okay.
How you do, you ask, you want to involve people in something, finish. And you want to engage them.
So Alphonse, what's your objective? Why do you want to talk to people who have undergone Falcon? Oh, okay. So in that sense, if you ask a survey and tell them, how was your experience in Falcon? They're participating in a study. Survey response. But you have the survey tool and you ask them, you were a participant in Falcon. Could you tell me, are these questions up to you? They say yes, that's CI. But if they answer that, they tell you actually participating. It's trial study. Susten.
I guess I'll propose a CPI group because if we maintain this technology, we still have
Yes, yes.
not actually for people to try to be engagement.
Okay, so the thing about CI is that the terminologies that you use in one part of the so I'll leave that up to the robot to decide what you want. But I think you need to be consistent. Because if some members of the team, the same person, this and another, it's going to be really confusing. Even in the UK, so it's not just in some countries, a lot of countries. So I think my suggestion is come up with terms that everyone uses. It doesn't matter what terms you
That's
use.
why I want to be here today. How to miss. We have exactly on the concept.
Yeah.
So now it will be very easy. Maybe one cannot understand as soon as tomorrow when it's again, we will be exchanging.
Yeah.
And everyone will be saying, yes, I think that will ensure the and,
Okay. Now for our first activity, group activity. So when you have an idea project, it could be a trial, it could be a SWOT. So do it in a trial. It's a good idea to map out what qualitative research you can do and what CEI you can do. Because again, I think the challenge is people might mistake those concepts. So it's good to map them out. Let me give you an example. Um, Scenario. You want to develop a referral system to be used by community healthcare workers for babies in rural areas with spina bifida to get access to surgery. So this is actually very similar to the project that we are proposing with the Indian Algeria hub because there are focused on pediatric surgery. Spina bifida, I am not a surgeon, according to pediatric surgeon. Outcomes for spina bifida are good as long as they are detected early and do the surgery immediately. Unfortunately, if you are in a rural area far from district hospital, screening might be a problem. So you want to educate community health to be able to easily identify and tell the go to a district hospital for operation. Good idea, right? So the question is, what kind of CEI and what kind of qualitative research? So these are my simple answers. CEI, what can you possibly do? Number one, you want to train community health. But community workers, as Emmanuel pointed out, they're not medically trained. I didn't know what community health workers were. Members of the community that are in contacts. So it's good to develop training with them on how to detect bifida. So you might have to come up with easy to read, understandable material of what to look at in a baby to see if it has. But the language needs to not be technical like in books, but language. That's if you co-develop module. Yes.
have their own names that they call
Yeah.
some have maybe
Exactly.
they call it something. You have to read it and that thing will be the one put on paper.
That's CEI. Uh, patient education. It's not just important that you train community healthcare workers. Parents of the patients also need to know about their child's condition. They need to develop that with. And then, if, I think the challenge in a lot of countries is that there might not be enough healthcare workers. And I know that children with skin conditions, if you don't have enough physical therapists in the community, you can actually have physical therapists train volunteers in the community to do physical therapy with the children. Maybe it's being done already, but that's another form of. Now, what about your qualitative research? You could have a focus group with parents, with experiences. So you want to access parents whose children have had spina bifida surgery. And you might do a prospective study. You follow babies who have gone through the referral system and babies who did not go through. You compare the outcomes of babies. That's the research. All of this, these are all publishable. But one is CEI, one is qualitative research. So, what are you going to be? I will be, Emmanuel grouped you into three groups. Each group will have a scenario. And then you're simply for CEI, what do you do for qualitative research? We even have I don't think we have a paper for that. I think you can just use. So you can just use a regular piece of paper. You can cut it or divide it in half. And then you can just write. So group one, factors preventing people in rural areas from coming to their post-surgical follow-ups. There. Two, challenges with patients with stoma bags in their carers experience. And three, I think Jean-Luc develop a consent form that will make understanding of clinical trials easier. So, if you want to talk group ones, if you want to talk amongst yourselves, group two and group three, give you a few minutes, and then share your ideas.
One we one.
Everyone is having a problem.
Yes.
Okay, let us.
Let us start. Let's group ourselves according to the groups. Group one.
Here. Hey, let's do that.
Let's group two it here.
What do you want? That's three. Okay.
Group three, I think that's perfect. That's the.
Yeah.
I think honestly,
Wagira ibyo twavuze ko byari muri aka gace kanyu.
sorry everyone, apologies. You happy if I take photos of the group while you are? Yes. You can put on the TSU website.
Yes.
Send for. Thank you, thank you. I will, yeah, put this on the website.
Akavuka n'ukugeza ku gatanga.
Emmanuel.
They are different.
There's more. I want to talk about.
Nyine kuhagera aho babona twabangura ubu dushobora kujya muri wenda ugomba kujya ahantu
Oh, let's one. So how many minutes do you want to because how many more minutes? 2 more minutes? 950. Hello everyone. 5 more minutes. Sorry, 5 more minutes left. Thank you. Very similar to you. So 2 more minutes, everyone. Sorry for the time crunch. Yeah. end, everyone. Sorry. Okay, everyone. Hello, everyone. Sorry. So we have a few slides. We have a few slides. So it's fine if you don't have all your answers, but I would love to hear from you. Let's start with group three because we always start with group one. So let's start with group three. Group three.
Okay, group three.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, race, habits and cultural attributes related to the tribe.
Okay.
So then you can use them to research aligned the research and materials.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then involve them in the question area.
And so that's CI or that qualitative research?
Okay,
Oh, qualitative research. Okay.
yeah,
Yes.
that's
So I
for
sustain. Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Quantitative ones explain pilot before.
Okay.
We didn't
That's fine. So this is a really interesting. So I think Jean-Luc talked about this yesterday. The results were that a lot of patients don't understand the consent process within the research. There's actually a field of research on how do you make sure that you get informed consent. And there's actually research also done in Rwanda. I don't know where it is exactly in Kigali, but there's a research facility here called Rinda Ubuzi. If you've heard of it. They focus on reproductive. They have a published paper on optimizing informed consent when women get a contraceptive ring. So it's not surgery, but the principles of that you can actually apply to surgery as well. So one study you could do is this. So there have been published articles that have looked at what you call interactive and multimedia consent forms. So instead of patients reading the consent form, the nurse or the physician comes with a tablet and lets the patient watch a video instead of reading. And so what you could do is maybe a comparative test where you have one group of patients doing the traditional consent form, one video consent. And then, this is a bit challenging, some studies have actually assessed understanding. So, for the human challenge trial, what we did is a bit challenging to do. Once people have read information, they are given a short assessment, 10 questions. And they need to have answered the 7 out 8 or 7 out of 10 questions for them to actually sign the consent. Because they need to understand what they're doing. Now, if you do that, double-edged sword. So it can be good or bad because people might feel if they don't pass the assessment, they might feel anger towards it. So it's something that you need to decide if you want to do. But thank you. Oh, so thank you, Group 3. Group 2. Challenges with patients with stoma bags. So CEI and quality.
We need to develop the tool in them
Mm-hmm.
in order to get a tool which will help the patient to understand and give a feedback to the proper tissue.
Yes.
And then we found we discussed with one of them, the key person among them, and explain how he can or she can collect attackers or interconduct interviews at that level. Correspond back.
Yes.
That will be a qualitative training, and from by there do the quantitative by conducting in a discussion
Mhm.
and in touch.
So one of our pump priming projects for this is actually based on a pump priming project done in the Philippines. And so we have collaborators there. And they did work. It's again another animal. It's called starfish, and they looked at the experiences of patients and carers report stoma bags because you have this family member that changes. And finally, group one. Factors preventing people.
Actually, I have a question.
Yes, sure.
Where first the
The identity of the case with colostomy, the patient with colostomy, you have to put them properly on their locations.
where?
If the patient, by experience or knowledge, could be in their village or the hospital, I could found them on the location.
The challenge of finding them.
Yes, was the challenge. Are you going to go to the hospital and them there or the community? How are you going to, for example, if you come in my village where I'm living, how are you going to know that patient is having a cholesterol?
Yeah.
Question by itself is also a challenge. We need also to make a plan to know how we're going to identify each of them. What we're going to do.
Starting by knowing the colostomy bag is, who could have that colostomy bag? So when we discuss with general surgeons, and they tell you the discharge patient in the community. So when I went to the community, I could pass it through any community workers and ask him how do you patients who have this
Yeah, actually, our colleague was just suggesting that you can go to the resource, they are contact, that's right. Go to the resource.
Oh yeah. So if you go through ethical approval, that's yeah. You need.
You shall not be employed children who have operated on that, or the Pro is suggesting that probably you go around the hospital. Yeah, because you have to understand it.
Yeah.
We are the community that we are really targeting. But it's not like someone who is go like in the bus driver, it's very easy to find the map and you find the map to understand how we can approach them.
So what you can do, if you have like professional if you operate on someone, and then you might say, oh, you might tell the patient, is it okay if a research nurse talks to you about your experience? Because I'm not really sure about the stigma of colostomy bag. In some cultures, there is a stigma, especially if it's that's why some people to cover it. In the UK, that's the case. There's research on what do people feel when they have this, you know? Yes. Yeah.
It was a picture of people
Yes.
who made back.
Yes.
So that I think we can even discuss how we manage to put them together.
Yeah, so in the UK, there are what you call support groups. So they are set up by people or families with family members bags. And so they're turning something that's quite negative, something that can have stigma, into something positive. So they have a football team where the requirement is you need to have colossus.
I think probably to the has created there is one side who was working here. He created a flow for the people are like colostomy,
Okay. Yeah.
to give them free colostomy.
Oh,
People
okay.
probably they transfer the issue is having this network. It's one of the example. Probably
Exactly.
is having
As you are doing this, like it's not part of research process. The research is started with the problem. So any researcher don't do research just because you want to do it. You have identified a problem within a community. And actually you know those people before even you go and look. Because you cannot do research like this. You have your people who want to do research around colostomy bags. It's because you have it there. So that's your starting point. So you should be having a purpose doing whatever you do research.
Thank you, Professor Frost. And thank you for. I'm really happy that you are all asking questions and you're very engaged. Thank you. And finally, group one. Professor, yeah.
One we have follow-ups. We for the CI activity that we propose, we started by identifying the strategy of reaching to those people who have been operated in second to that, we will discuss about each few individuals in that community about what they think about the factors for them to go to the and we will call it questionnaire, which may later. And and we may also train one of them to interview the others. Those are the activities in CIA. Research wise, we say we are going to develop a protocol and submit it for approval. That is the process. We may organize focus groups and quantitative interviews. Sometime later, we may also publish.
Yeah, very good. Some of these parts I will go through quickly because I think, for example, this why CI is important. I think we all is it. I think we all are in the same boat. It is important. The main reason is so. Um, I mentioned this yesterday. In 2020, UNICEF actually published the minimum standards for in indicators. It doesn't tell you how to do CEI because CEI, again, in Lagos, it's very different in Kigali or in Quezon. But it tells you what are the different standards you should aim for so that the CEI is not what we call, there's a term used called tokenistic. So you don't just do CEI because you have to do it, but it's really important for the communities you serve. Yeah. I just have to point out in the UK in particular, and in a lot more other countries, when you submit an application in the NIHR, you actually need to put what kind of you plan to do you are doing. So if you have read the GSU2 document, it's a really long document where we asked funding for 5 years. We actually have a whole section on CI. So funders are realizing more. So it's quite. I have this joke here. It's so you can have the best medication, but if it's not practical, people will not. There's so a woman can clearly take a pill that big, and so you can have the best medical intervention if you don't understand why people are not able to follow the intervention. You don't have a good plan. For example, why is it so hard for people to stop smoking? we all know for years there's so much research that smoking is bad. And the best way, if you have an anti-smoking campaign, to look at smokers, chronic smokers. Ask them, what are your challenges? Like, you know it's bad, but why do you still smoke? So that's an example of CEI. Okay, this is our second activity, second breakout session. Um, we know at this point that CEI is important. At this point, we can distinguish CEI from research. But the real world, the theory that we are learning now, as you pointed out, is not the real world. Um, yesterday, I think there was a problem when I think the power got cut. And so I told myself, okay, I need to adapt in my head. If I don't have slides, how will I present my work? And so my plan was, if PowerPoint didn't work, go down to the level of everyone, bring a microphone and just talk to people. And so when you are doing CI, you need to be able. Because if you go to the countryside, there might not be internet. There might not be slides. So you need to be prepared. Maybe instead of that, you use flip charts. Or maybe you just talk to people. So it's always good to have what they call a backup. So this activity, we're going to do what we call SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis, it's used in business, but essentially it looks at a strategy for your CI. And it tries to identify its strengths, good in it, its weaknesses, its opportunities. So opportunities would be what are factors, external factors that can improve it, and what are threats, what are external threats that can prevent it from being successful. So, yeah, SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I'll give you an example. Okay, so the pandemic happened March 2020. Normally, before the pandemic, at least in my previous job, we would have CI meetings sometimes every month, sometimes twice a month. And we would gather in a room like this, serve people coffee, tea, biscuits, and talk. But because of social distance, so all of a sudden we had to use Zoom, we had to use Teams, which we are also tired of. Right? But then we had to adapt. So let's do a SWOT analysis on PPI meetings over Zoom. You have to admit that working on Zoom has its advantages. I've been working with Emmy and Emmanuel for the last 6 months. I've only seen them 2 days ago. So there's an advantage. There's also so SWOT analysis. What are the strengths of Zoom? Geographical distance. It's cheaper to run. You don't have to rent a room. You don't need to buy coffee, tea, biscuits. Zoom. Infection control. Weaknesses. Digital exclusion. In my situation, older people are not familiar with technology. If you are doing a PPI project on arthritis, like I help the group of researchers, arthritis usually, how do you meet them? They're high risk for COVID, and they can't come to you, and they don't know how to use Zoom. That's a disadvantage. No face-to-face interaction. So there are some of you, I've heard your voices, but I've never seen your faces, or I've only seen pictures. So that's quite difficult because CEI, it's scientific, but it's also very personal. And so if I can't see your faces, can't see your facial reactions, it's very difficult. That's a weakness. Opportunities. So what did we do? Um, older people, I have Zoom. So I would call them on their phone and I would tell them, okay, are you pointing your mouse on the Zoom icon? Double click on this. They're in their 70s, their 80s. So you have that's an opportunity to make them join your online use. Second, hybrid meetings. So when the pandemic was not too bad, some people would gather, those who were still high risk, they would. And what are some threats? Weak internet connection. It happens everywhere. If So what I tell people, oh, your internet connection is weak, switch off your camera to save on bandwidth. I can't see them, but at least I can hear them. And if the future goes down, hopefully that doesn't happen. Lockdowns. So I will, Emmanuel, do you mind distributing to each of these groups? So you will all be. So I will be showing you different CEI strategies, and you are to do a quick SWOT analysis for each. So you'll be given this. Just write the. Okay. So group one, a meeting face to face in community durbars. I don't know if you use this term. In Nigeria, I think they use it. Or during your umuganda. Talk about early cancer screening and surgery. Number two, health education sessions on sexual health for teenagers. Again, apologies, it's not specific to surgery. I couldn't really think of surgical examples. And then three, CI meeting with mothers and children suffering from malnutrition. Example, very, very. So they all have their strengths, their weaknesses, opportunities. And threats. So, yes.
The tea is ready.
Oh, I wonder if do you think we can have a working group like
I was thinking that if you like finish the training, take lunch, then after not lunch, then after break, you pass through the training that will.
okay, yeah, sure. I'll just finish this and then I will.
Is there any other side?
This is just part one. Part two, I can maybe skip part two and we can go straight to the training.
Hey, okay. How is it done? How do you training?
And then we need to talk about vision and we need to talk about species. Don't worry, that's for part two. So we'll just this is almost done with part one.
So when can we plan to
So can we have I wonder can we is it okay if we do the coffee? Can they bring the coffee? So I think we can just have like we call it working coffee where they can have coffee while they have the session. Is that okay? It's okay. Are you sure?
Yes,
You're
yes.
sure?
Yes, it's okay. We need to save our time.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
In this trip,
Then after this exercise, they take coffee, then they come back, we work by
So we can then we just tell them coffee.
let us finish them first.
Okay, all right.
ibyo byumba bitandukanye noneho ukabona rimwe uretse mu bantu hejuru cyangwa hasi bakivuze ya activities uburyo nta mwanya uzajya wo kuganira nabo kujya
biriya kuba icyo tubabwira no mu Rwanda isaka everyone, 5 more minutes and then we'll ask your Two more minutes, everyone.
Okay. Add arguments, have ideas.
Last minute, and then the last Okay, everyone. Thank you. So, sorry. Hi, everyone. Yeah. So I think we can share. Sorry for the time limitations, but if you are able to share what you've discussed, even if you haven't done the whole SWOT, that's fine. Can we start with group one, please? Meeting in community Durbars or Umuganda to talk about early cancer screening. Dr. JC, yes.
This is a group one.
What is that?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, from the group one, we are just talking the scope about the meeting in community. We're going to talk about the cancer screening. We looked at the strength. First of all, this is it will be a face-to-face meeting or face-to-face talk, and we will be having a big number of people. Because of here in Uganda, it's regulated by law.
Yes.
And everyone above years. Unless that fast people. We'll just, if you are in that area, you are going to have to meet a lot of people. And also with who if group is you'll be having highly educated, people, law, public servant.
Okay.
Also, though you are having really genius group.
Yes.
It's one of the
Yes, very good.
but also from the weaknesses. Both of you are just discussing about but there are guys who are just studying. So when you are just talking and that as also talking. Now the boss. So also we have that trend that also this interoperability can be one of the weaknesses. So when you are discussing with people with different levels, sometimes the understanding and also how you are explaining it can just take time. Can take time, even though that can be a strength, but also on the other side can be a weakness. And then another thing that we have identified as weakness in Uganda, actually, each what we are calling Mudugudu, like 100 houses.
Okay.
So there is a design activity that you have to do.
Okay.
If it's you have to prepare a loan, you have to build a house for someone.
Okay.
So sometimes you're having many activities or many programs together, and you will have this talk after already somehow tired, and also
tired, yeah.
others are just rushing to other activities.
Okay.
That can be a weakness. For the opportunity, this is the cancer screening. Nowadays, now cancer is you can just say that is a fear many people. So it's really.
So you just say cancer,
Yeah.
and people are like, oh yes, let me go there because I'm
Yeah,
scared. Yes.
yes. Now
Okay.
it's for the opportunity. It's interesting from that. Really want to listen to. And another opportunity, this talk will be free of cost. You meet people,
Yes.
you don't pay any cost,
Yeah.
okay? You don't have to pay any travel, there's no transport that is required, and you also, so it's, there is no really investment that you're putting. You live in the same community and then you get that opportunity. But for the trust, even though Muganda is protected by law and what, that sometimes people they tend to be absent. The absenteeism sometimes can be very high. So you can just miss sometimes the important programs. But it's what we have for.
Thank you, Dr. Jason Group One. Really good analysis. So, with every CEI strategy, there are strengths and weaknesses. The, the key there is you just have to pick a strategy with more strengths than weaknesses. You had a really good point about in a very heterogeneous group, you have Umuganda. You may have the mayor or maybe the president and a street cleaner together doing that. And so their understanding of cancer screening might be different. And this is, I guess, my suggestion. When in doubt, go simple. So it's better to oversimplify or simplify things than make it complicated. But that's, in theory, that's easy, but in actuality, it can be very, even I have difficulty with that. But thank you, Group 1. Group 2. Group 2 is health education.
Yes,
Yes.
so strength,
Mhm.
among strength, what we found that this is the best
Mhm.
to talk about this sexual health.
Yes.
issue.
Mhm.
That's one. Secondly, we found also it's an opportunity to have an open discussion and to hear from the teenager issue they get defined.
Yes.
We found also the strength that it is the fact that they are in school.
Mhm.
It's better to have like a big audience at once.
Okay.
Yes. Good. And also, we don't know exactly if it's an outcome of what, but unwanted pregnancy will be decreases diseases.
Mhm.
Yes, and all of that we put them on the strength. Okay. Yes. So the weakness, we found that things like a culture barrier can be one of the culture, religion, things. And also time to talk because we know that they are teenagers in schools, so they are busy. To find a timetable which will put the what we're going to teach and then yes. We also think that weakness we may find is also difficult to have consent from their parents. So they don't allow permission to have their permission. And also sufficient tool. Yeah. So opportunities, we think that when you want to opportunities, we think that the support of the government, because
Yeah.
we think also that we are preparing a better future for the country when young people are well educated about sexual advantage in the economy and the country and their future. And on threats, we are think that we might have conflict with we call it we don't know how to put it, but we call it conflict culture. Like,
Okay.
yeah, we some people might not agree with that
Okay.
according to your religion, for example.
Yes.
Yes. And also and uh, that's we think also after teaching them, sometimes we may get another result which was not expected.
Okay.
We think that the interested one we want now to go to test.
To test the theory.
Yes.
Okay. What they say is, at least if they test the theory, they know the theory. Because if they test it without knowing the theory, then that's more dangerous. Yeah, that's worse. So again, with anything, there are strengths, there are weaknesses. CPI activity. Finally, group 3. Meeting with mothers of children suffering from malnutrition. Very good.
One of the strengths
Yes.
is the kids that stigma,
Okay. Okay.
that stigma, and also it's an opportunity to exchange ideas among themselves. As for the opportunity, they have the same problem. They will be part of the solution. They can participate in providing ideas on the available solution. Community. Also, on the weakness, it might be costly to bring these people together, either for the organizer or for the individuals, paying for transport, for everything to happen. And for the threat, also for the weakness, these people will leave their regular activities.
Exactly. Yes. Very important. Yeah.
And for the threat, each place could be far from home. Distance.
Thank you. Very, very, very good answers, everyone. So, actually, sorry. So, I have like 3 or 4 more slides. Okay. This is the last part of. So, this is what we're doing. I have, I think, 4 or 5 more slides for part 1, and then we'll have a short coffee break. So, what I'm thinking, if you're okay with that. We have tea and coffee outside. If you can just bring the refreshments in here, and then we can continue with the next part while you're having your coffee or tea. Are you okay with that? It's fine. Okay. So part 2. So you'll notice part 1 is mostly theory. Part 2, we're going to talk of actual things. How do you actually do it? Um, because there's time limitations, I'm going to skip some parts. And we're directly going to go into the training for tomorrow in Chibogora Hospital. Um, Chibogora Hospital, one of the keys when you're doing CEI is knowing who your audience are or who your audience is. The reason why I focused a lot on theory in this hub group is because the hub is usually the one that is going to implement the CEI project. But when you're talking to community healthcare workers tomorrow, you don't need to focus too much on theory. You need to focus on what you actually plan. And so the presentation tomorrow will be much, much simpler than this. The only reason I'm putting all the theory here is because you will decide and you will design the CI project, but then you will pass it on for them to implement. And so again, it's very important that you know who you're talking to. In this case, I know it's the hub, so that's why I have all this information. But your presentation tomorrow will not be like this. Or is tomorrow or Thursday? I don't even know what day it is anymore. It's Wednesday today. Okay, Friday. Yes. Sorry. So it will be much more simple. I have an outline. In fact, I was telling Emmanuel It might even be good if you don't even use PowerPoints. You just use a flip chart. It's about talking to people. If you could use PowerPoints, but very little text, mostly just pictures. And a lot of it will involve introducing yourself. I think Dr. JCC, when you go into a community and they don't know what GSU is, introduce yourself because you are asking them about their experiences. And so you might need to explain what you're doing there, the importance, and use very simple language. But that we'll talk about that in part two. And then towards the end, our last part, we'll be talking about our two CI projects. Emmanuel will talk about pitch. And I'll talk about briefly about species, the question, which I'm trying to finalize the program, and then I'll be sending the final form. So I'll finish up part one, and then coffee break, maybe 10 minutes just to relax, and then we'll go straight to what we are doing. Are you okay with this schedule? Not too fast, not too, okay, great. So the next question is this: when can we do CEI? So CEI occurs in many levels. Okay, so there is. I'm going to I'm going to jump to a slide from part. So I just have to point out now, if there's one thing that I want to take away from CEI, how to do CEI, it's just two words: flexibility and self-reflexivity. So these are two concepts. Flexibility is not all places you will go will have a nice room like this. So you need to be flexible. But also self-reflexivity. Self-reflexivity means after a CEI activity, you ask yourself, did it go well? Did it not go well? And if it did not go well, or if it went well, you say, okay, what was the good thing I did? And how can I do that next time? If it did not go well, because believe me, I've had my own fair share of unsuccessful CEI meetings. You can feel bad after, but then after you feel bad, you think, okay, what did not go well, and what can I do next time to improve? Those are, I think, if there's one thing I want to share with you at the end, it's those two. Be able to adapt, be flexible, but also reflect what went go well. So the next question is, okay, so far we've been talking about different kinds of CEI. CEI actually occurs on many levels. If I may share with you, of, uh, so this is very quite theoretical. This is based on a model proposed in 1969 called Arnstein's level of involvement. So what it says is that CEI can occur on many levels. It can be as simple as talking to a motorcycle driver and saying, have you had injuries before? How did you take care of yourself after that injury? And just having a 15-minute talk over family. That's CEI. It can also be someone like Emmy who is very deeply connected to the group. And so we have what you call a continuum or different levels of CEI. I am not saying that level one is worse than level five. No. It's your responsibility to determine and look at the situation and say, I wonder what level we can do. Each level has its own advantages and disadvantages. So level one is quite low. It's mostly engagement when you share information. Now the advantage of that is this: you can reach more people. Why? In Uganda, you talk to people, you talk to 100 people. But are they able to actively involve themselves? No. Because if you're meeting with 150 people and they all have their own comments, that will drive you crazy trying to write down all their comments. On this end, on the extreme end, you have community directors. You have a few community leaders. Let's say you have 5 community leaders. It's really good because the community actually directs it. They tell you, oh, this is what they think will work, etc. But usually you have very few people joining. So I'm not saying level 1 is bad, level 5 is good. It's really context dependent. So let me give you some examples of CEI and the trials we're doing at GSU and what level I think they are in. Okay? So just to share, level 1 is sharing of information, engagement. So we are the research team, this is our findings, and this is how it can help improve your health. Level 2, consultation. Classic information sheet. What do you think of the words? What do you think of the transcripts? Level 3, planning together. So, in some parts of the world, when research groups have a priority setting meeting, they actually include patients. So, they say, okay, what are problems in this community? Tell us what your problems are. We'll think of a protocol, a study to do. So, that's level 3. 4, acting together. So, maybe you might have vision, for example, you train community members to do work of the researchers, and then community. So, level 1, dissemination of results and summaries. Level 2, Tiger. So, I shared Tiger yesterday. So, Tiger is the work we did in Ghana, where we consulted with um, hernia patients, doctors, and told them, we asked patients, are you comfortable if a non surgeon physician does your hernia repair? So that's consultation. It's level 2. It's slightly higher because you get their views. It's not just one way. You don't just give them information. You get their feedback as well. Level 3, planning together. Pigeon. So when you meet with community healthcare workers, you ask them, what do you know about post-operative care? So you ask them what they know, and then you say, okay, what is important? How do you want to be trained in terms of post-operative care? Priority setting. Acting together. So this is again, I mentioned this yesterday. We have a small study in Cape Town. It's called Panda, where we have community members trained in qualitative research to do interviews. Level 5, unfortunately, we don't have a study yet. But you know what? Maybe that's something to aspire for in the future. Sometimes you have to start with level 1. Because, uh, Jean Claude, sorry, well, Jean Claude mentioned, how can people be involved if they don't understand what research is? So maybe you want to start with patient education first. And once they're more aware of research and surgery, then you can go up the level. So with that, I would like to end part 1. So I hope you're okay if you have 10 minutes to maybe get your tea, coffee, and come back here, and then we'll talk about what we're doing on Friday, the format, my suggestions, and then I'll talk about species. Emmanuel will talk about pigeon. And I aim to finish by 12 because I think Rachel and Donna will talk about monitoring. Are you okay with the schedule? Great. So yes. Oh, yes, Austin.
I have a question on this.
Yes.
I remember posting when he was introducing us on this activity.
Yeah.
He clearly gave us a homework of saying on the project that will be starting should have a CI.
Mhm.
And now we are doing project search.
Yes.
Okay, I can't feel really there is a strong CI in it.
Okay.
And even for other projects as well.
Mhm.
So because I would prefer to have like specific parts in the protocol,
Mhm.
stating what will be done specifically in terms of CI, so that we decrease
Okay.
these CI. Yes.
Good question. And I know we have Don and Rachel. So you know the protocol really well. I've only read the protocol of Protect Search once. So please correct me if I'm seeing it wrong. So Protect Search platform trial. So that means as investigational INDs come in, we will add those. But initially, I think it's it's not the NO2. Is that the NO2 or?
Or does he have to be green?
Oh, okay, got it. So rest your one. One thing that you could look into would be consent forms. And I was talking about this with Rachel and Donna. Um, you were part of Cheetah, right? Cheetah, it's a bit challenging to get CEI for a few reasons. Number one, randomization is done per hospital. So number two, there was consent, but it was for data capture. And again, you might think, oh, they know that they're on a trial because they signed the data capture. But try to think from the perspective of a patient. If you are undergoing cancer surgery, and it's very stressful for you, you probably will not remember that you signed the data release form, the data capture form. So Cheetah is a bit difficult because there's no investigational product. It the intervention was on the side of the surgeons, and sometimes because of the stress, the patients might not even know that they're on a trial. But for Protect Surge, they're going to be having this uh, nebulizer. Nebulizer. So it's something actively that they will be doing. So what can you do in terms of CI? Number one, consent. So, for example, I haven't seen the consent forms, but what you could potentially would be to add maybe some illustrations in the consent form. Like some people might now not know what nebulizer is. They might be scared, like, why will I put that in my mouth? What will that do? So maybe some information about how a nebulizer works. Maybe you could have a short video clip. Maybe Emmanuel could demonstrate how to use a nebulizer. You videotape that, and then you have subtitles in Kenya, Rwanda, and you show that to the patient. And then you ask them, "This is what you're doing. Are you okay with that?" So what you do is you make that video, you show it to some patients who are not going to be participants, and that's your CPI. I think that's probably one of the easiest parts of a trial where you can do CI, the consent process. Because that's the part where you need to ensure that the patient understands what's going on. So that's my suggestion. I am happy to talk further about this with Sostan and Emmanuel about the consent part of Dexter. Um, but yes, you definitely can do CEI in that part of the research. So, any other questions before we have our great? So, please, you can get your tea and coffee. Please come back about 10-15 minutes, and then we'll start with what happens on Friday. And then Emmanuel and I will talk about pigeon and species. Thank you, everyone, for your participation.
Let us have a cup of tea. The tea is here.
Email them to say that if there are any comments in it or any changes, it's difficult to find, but that are, you make it version one to say it's yeah.
Ramsay one. Might be Ramsay one. I feel like we were doing it currently.
Yeah, maybe it was.
Yeah.
Maybe it was.
Yeah.
Abarukuna kama barakoze zabo kubatsa.
Izi nibyo bintu biriya si byahagaze.
Gute?
Bya yujiringi.
Navanemo ijwi.
Amafoto
Maracyafata.
Oya.
do you want? I would probably say I want to learn how to speak all the languages of all the hubs because language is very important. And so my example is in English. It's a comic strip that basically you have a doctor saying you suffered a concussion to the soft tissue below the forethoracic vertebra, exacerbating the proximal sternum, and the patient does not understand. When the doctor could have just said, you have a bruised rib. This is the importance of language when you are communicating with the community. Another example, if you tell patients you have cellulitis, they might not know that. If you say, "Oh, you have a skin infection, they might understand that. So it's very important that you suit the language to your audience and also use examples that they can relate to. I just want to share with you a paper I encountered a few months ago um, where you have researchers in where's this in Malawi. Um, they wanted to explain to the community. Remember, CEI, one aspect of that is patient education. And one of the most challenging things to explain to patients in a trial would be randomization. And what does double blind mean? Because that's very important when you're doing an RCT. But to some patients, they might feel, wait, I don't want to get the placebo, I want to get the actual medicine. How do you explain that to them? So this trial, again, this is not a surgical trial, unfortunately. So if you look at the literature of CEI, a lot of it has been done on infectious disease and sanitation. What's really groundbreaking about the CEI we are doing in GSU is that it's related to surgery. There's very little CEI done on surgery. So something to look forward to and something to publish. So this group of researchers wanted to test the uh, one antibiotic. So the patients would either be given an antibiotic or a placebo. And so, how do you explain to the patient you can either get a placebo or you can either get the antibiotic? And they said they haven't gone to university to school. They don't understand randomization. We need to come up with a story, a narrative that they will understand. So the community they worked with were potato farmers. So they said, okay, let's think of a story explaining a trial, but in the context of potato farming. So what they did was they created a story, a storyboard using flip charts, pictures to explain the trial. They said, okay, how do they explain inclusion criteria? They said, the story is this. There's a big fertilizer company that wanted to test if their fertilizer worked. For you to join this, you need to have your own plot of land. You need to own it. You're not a tenant farmer. So that's an inclusion criteria. So that's the story they said. If you own the land and you're farming in it, you can join. If you don't own it, unfortunately, you can't join. How did they explain randomization? They said, this fertilizer company will donate us 100 sacks of fertilizer. However, 50 of those will contain the new fertilizer, 50 of those will contain something that looks like the fertilizer, but is not the fertilizer. You don't know what you're going to get. You have a box with 1 to 100, you grab a number, and then that number of the sack will be given to you. Okay? That's randomization. That's placebo, and so 50 with the fertilizer and 50 with something that looks like the fertilizer, but it's not. And then you will use that, and after 3 months, you will measure how tall your plants are, observing. So they made up this story uh, that is relatable to the community. So it depends on what your community. If it's a fishing community, maybe think of a story that you can connect to the tribe. Um, and they basically came up with this flip chart storyboards, and they connected it to the use of the antibiotic. So sometimes you will get the antibiotic, sometimes you will get something that looks like the antibiotic, but is not. So it's about giving examples relatable. So, what is happening on Friday? So, these slides, I have to admit, they're not the prettiest slides because they were slides I used when I was chatting with Emmanuel to plan. So, I think it's very important at the start that introductions are done. And this might be a bit of a challenge because if there are 30 people there, you don't want introductions to take up too much time. So what we can do, okay, and this is my suggestion to Emmanuel, and it's up to you to decide how. What you could do is we could start by introducing ourselves as a group from the University of Rwanda Global Surgery, and then just like what we did this morning, we group the community healthcare workers and community members into smaller groups, and then we have one member of the hub, and then we chat among these groups. Because if everyone introduces themselves to the big group, number one, that will take time. Number two, people might be shy to talk. But if you're only talking with 4 or 5 people, you might be able to share more of the reason why you're interested in joining. So that's my suggestion. It's up to you to decide, Emmanuel. To decide how you want to do it. But that's my suggestion. So we start by introducing ourselves as a group, and then break out into groups, one hub member per small group. Uh, and then you just chat about what made you interested in this. Maybe they found out that will there be free food? I don't know. Will there be free food? Maybe they're going for that, or maybe they just want to know what people in the capital and University of Rwanda are doing. So the best time to talk about it. Yeah, so we introduce ourselves. This is the first. This should have been the first slide. Sorry. So we should introduce ourselves. A few days ago, I sent Emmanuel a short paragraph I used on Google Translate in Kenya, Rwanda. I will try to memorize that so I can introduce myself in the local language. But it's important to be friendly to the community and not threatening. And then, so since they're already in their breakout groups, we start with a very simple question. What do they know about research? Do they even know what research is? Have they seen research in the community? Can you tell us what it's about? Do you think it's important or not? Um, and how do you think it is of value to the community? So it's just a short discussion. The nice thing is because each group will have a hub member who has done this training, you will know what questions to ask and how to ask with the community members. So maybe 10 to 15 minutes for this, and then each group can share their ideas. Now, you can try to let one of the community healthcare workers talk and share to the bigger group, but if they're shy, then the hub member in that group will probably have to share with the white, if you're okay with that. And then, next part, we do an activity, what is community? So I was thinking, we want to make this as light as possible, as fun as possible, before we talk about the actual project. So my suggestion for Emmanuel is this. We do per group a small creative activity. So we were to give each group maybe a flip chart, and then Emmanuel will provide maybe some coloring materials or what, and some cutouts from magazines of pictures of a community. And what we're going to do is each group will make a small poster about what they think community is. And I don't know if this is good or bad. My suggestion is, do you think it's a good idea to have a contest? So each group will make a poster about what community is. And at the end, we put them in the wall, and then we judge what the best poster is. Is that a good idea or not? I'm not really sure. So that was my suggestion. What, like a contest, yeah.
So,
Yeah, so again, it's not something too serious, but it's something for people to just relax and not think of something too serious. So this is where we do the serious part. Or definition. That's the time when we talk about the species project. So because I don't speak in Kenya, Rwanda, Emmanuel might have to talk about the species project, which I will talk to you about, and then we talk about pigeon. What I was telling Emmanuel is that maybe we can do a CEI meeting then and there, a very simple one, where we ask them, community healthcare workers, what do they know about post-surgical care? Um, and would they be interested in being trained in post? So I think what needs to be explained in simple language is what is post-surgical care, especially if you have a patient who is discharged and they still have to do post-surgical care. So it needs to be in very simple language. Um, yes, bro.
This is a very good approach actually, because we are discussing adult people. And I should be much more comfortable expecting them on that. So I feel that Emmanuel has a lot of work today to prepare the session of Friday. And I would advise that you place pictures with logo pictures. We can provide some pictures of patients, some logo dressing that they should be recognizing. If you show someone from Kipora dressing like this, you will not even know that this is a patient. Really?
Yes. I don't know. So yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yes, Prof.
we should be making it something closer to
Okay. Sure.
you share some pictures once that can be used, and even take some different pictures of communities here and there in
Yep.
Rwanda, so that they really get a sense that they are similar to them.
Oh, I have a question. What is the word for community in Kenya?
That's a problem.
Oh, there's no single word. Oh my. Okay. So what are the words?
Maybe they call it Abaturage, but
This is why I wish I spoke the language so I would understand the nuances.
so I think we can do that like an exercise for the keywords
Yeah.
that Emmanuel may pick and share with the group to try to find one good translation.
Okay.
So we will have like a 6-hour drive tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that will be a very good exercise to do when you are driving. That people can go in chatting and asking all the times.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the exercise
Yes.
provided there, asking them, what do you think the community?
What is a community? What is a community to you? Because
Maybe we get some perceive this terminology.
let's ask our community representative. Emmy, what do you think? How should we approach this?
Normally when, because we do have like this level, we start from the village. So I can call it a village. I'm starting from the village level, yeah. And then community normally it's like in a Kenya one. I can call it in the one. If we say umuryango mugari, umuryango mugari. Sometimes it's, I would say that it's a bit difficult.
Okay.
To translate from English.
I understand. Yeah.
Because one word in English can explain, many words
Yes.
or like in the Kenya one. Just say about
I want it to be research. The community we are defining as researchers are quite different. They are defined. We go for Udu, whatever a village. but we are not talking about that. If people have the same disease, that is a community. So how do we call that in Rwanda? The people are sharing the same belief. That is another community. Abantu bafite ibyo bahuriye ikibahuza cyangwa ibibahuje. That's why we really need to sit and discuss.
So,
That's what I
yeah.
say. You know, like different culture, different,
For sure.
like in the in Ghana, they had some like words.
Mhm.
For example, you gave us an example of antibiotic.
Yes, yeah, we were talking about, yeah, what's
So
the Kenya?
in the Kinyarwanda, I think it's not antibiotic. You just call it Umuti. Just call it Umuti. Umuti is medicine.
So this is a very interesting discussion. And it reminds me of another paper, CEI paper, just published last year. And it was done, I think, in countries, Burkina Faso being one of them. Wanted to develop what you call a glossary of terms in the local language describing aspects of malaria care. So this group, I think they're from Liverpool in the UK. They want to develop what you call gene-drive mosquitoes. The simple explanation for a gene-drive mosquito is it's a genetically modified mosquito that when it reproduces with another mosquito, it prevents the progeny from reproducing. So what happens is, eventually, the malaria mosquitoes stop reproducing and the malaria cases drop. So the question is this: how will you explain gene-drive mosquitoes, genetic, genetic engineering or genetic modification in the local land? And this group, I actually was in contact with the primary authors, emailing. Um, they work on these different local languages. French and Diola in Burkina Faso, Bamanankan in Mali and Luganda. And they developed a glossary of terms because there are some words in English, specifically scientific English, that might not have an equivalent term. And so I'll just briefly show you. So what they did is they worked closely with linguists. So if you have linguists in the University of Rwanda, and the linguists are kind of like the middle persons, middle men and women. You have the scientists who decide these are the terms that we need to translate into local language. Linguists will then say, okay, this is how I understand it. So the linguists need to understand the principle. Then make the translation. Send over the translation to the community. The community will then be assessed. Do they understand it? Is it clear? Go back to the linguists, and then it's a cycle. And eventually you come up with a glossary of terms. And there are really, I found this paper very interesting, even if I don't speak these languages. But there were some, based on the translation, there were some misconceptions with the translation. So, for example, when in Burkina Faso, the translation for a gene-drive mosquito was a castrated mosquito. And we know that they're not really castrated because their genes were changed. So they had to make another translation. It's really interesting, right? And then, so the scientists and the linguists need to have a common language, obviously, because the linguists will do the translation. So the scientists knew French, the linguists knew French, and the local language, and that's what they used. Uh, so yes, word translation isn't one to one. Word in English is gene, but that's the Luganda term. It's very long. It's very long. But what's yeah, and then these are so, and then in some instances they had to make up a word. They had to make up a word from French. So, for example, the word chromosome. They had to uh, develop this in Diula from the French. It's very interesting. Um, and then they also used cultural experience of the community to influence translation. So, for example, um, To explain genetic inheritance, they use the term albinism. At least in Burkina Faso, people were aware of what albinos were in the community. Um, and what's interesting too is this, and this is where culture comes in. So the gene drive mosquitoes, the mosquitoes who are sterile, are actually male. But in Uganda, the culture is that sterility comes from the female. And so that's where culture plays a part because technically the sterile mosquitoes are male, but the concept of sterility is connected to the female. So, yeah. So I guess that's the challenge when you are trying to explain this. But this is part of CEI. This is the E part of CEI. Yes, Emmy, you were raising your hand.
How that
was happening.
Oh, this is what the paper says.
Actually, even the animals have a different culture because it's surprising
Uh,
Uganda because
yes, yes.
while ours in like in Rwanda they are friendly, they just fight.
Yes,
Sorry to interrupt you.
no problem. And even like so there's also in Mali, for example, the term generation. Before CEI input, the definition was people born at the same moment. So they were born, everyone was born right now. But when they did CEI on the translation, they changed the word and it's born at the same period, so the same scope. So yeah, those are the challenges when you're dealing with language in a country or even like across different countries. So it's just an example of how explaining scientific terms are. So like if you don't have a standard word for community, then I think you and the community need to define what that means. I don't know how you're going to do it, but I just want to reassure you I'm here to support you with whatever strategy you think is best. Uh, so to wrap up, we have 30 minutes before I give the floor to Don and Rachel. I'll spend a few minutes talking about the species project, which I'm trying to finalize the protocol and then I'll send to Emmanuel. And Emmanuel will talk about pigeon, which we will both explain to the community, to the group of people tomorrow. So this is called species, and I think I mentioned this yesterday. All our trials in GSU are animals. And so I didn't want to think of another animal because the whole idea of this study, it's kind of like, the idea is for it to be a SWOT. So if you have patients with SSIs, regardless of the animal trial, they will be part of species because they're all animal species, the names of the trial. So yeah, it's survey on patient experience of surgical site infection. Um, and this is not the final title. If you can think of a more creative title, I'm happy. I just couldn't think of any other. Uh, so yeah, so what's really interesting is that we have such a thing as patient-reported outcomes, and there are multiple patient-reported outcomes. And what's really interesting is that GSU has studies and trials that look into these. So, for example, quality of life. Um, there was a researcher yesterday who talked about catastrophic health expenditures. So, one of the PhD students, Joanna. You know Joanna. So she has a study called Crocodile, which looks at catastrophic health expenditures for cancer surgery in India. So that's a quality of life patient report out. And then there was a health economics study called Kiwi that looked at SSI costs. I think it was led by Mark. Oh, okay. So you're part of Kiwi, great. And then Talon, of course, Alphonsine. Symptoms and symptom burden. So over the phone, you ask the patient, "Oh, what are your symptoms?" Functional status, Panda. So what are your experience access to care? Then health behaviors, Feather. which is led by James Gillespie. So, what are the barriers to follow up? So, the idea is you want to modify behavior so that you can attend follow ups. But there's another aspect, patient experience. So, all of this is from the aspect of the hospital. But let's try to do some report outcomes that focus on their experience, particularly on SSIs. Because as we all know, SSIs are a big issue, a big problem. I don't think I need to show this because you probably know all of these stats. But I looked at literature and tried to find what are some effects of SSIs from the perspective of the patient. And some of them seem quite obvious. So there's a physical effect. Of course, they can't go back to normal activity, they can't go back to work. There's a psychological effect. If they are the sole provider in their family and they cannot work, that can affect their mental health. Social relationships, they can't go with their friends, they can't interact with their families. Economic effect, spiritual effect, and sometimes this can also affect the healthcare worker and patient relationship. So he said, okay, what if we try to gauge the experience of patients with SSIs, but not so much their experience in the hospital, but their experience outside, or maybe their fears once they are discharged with an SSI, when they're safe enough to be discharged. Sorry?
It's conventional.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, what's also interesting is that based on literature, there are post-operative challenges. And these are normally when you discharge a patient, they still need to care for themselves. But the challenges here are number one, how would patients know how to monitor their wound after discharge? What are the things that they need to look at before they call the hospital and say, I can see something green in my wound. Like, I think I need to call a doctor. They need education about it. How can they monitor at home? And a lot of it is about accessible communication with providers. You are all experts, but do you think the way we communicate how SSIs are understood by our patients? So those are issues. So along with all the issues of psychological, economic, physical, it would probably also be good to ask patients what they know about SSIs. Do you know who to contact if there is an emergency? And do you know where to go if there is a complication? So the whole idea, so all of these papers, by the way, from high-income countries. What if we try to do it here? And so the whole idea is to have a short questionnaire that patients can answer who've had SSIs. I know some sites, for example, some sites have just finished trials and they're still waiting for approvals for upcoming trials. So the idea is, even if they're not patients on trials, as long as they have SSIs, maybe they can answer this for a survey. And what are some outputs and benefits of this? A publication, very good. Patient feedback. But also, this I want to highlight in terms of CI, this is the doctor. Based on their feedback, this can actually be used for future CEI projects. Let's say they say from the survey, I don't know what SSIs are. If let's say you survey 300 patients in the University of Rwanda hospital, and out of a scale of 1 to 5, they say almost 1 or 2, I don't know anything about SSIs. Then clearly, that is an issue. They don't know what SSIs are. So what project can we do? Maybe patient education. So yeah. So the whole idea is to have what you call a pilot study just to see if it's going to work. I shared with this with the different hubs and they seemed quite interested. And the whole idea is to, and I was talking to Emmanuel and the hub CI leads, we will definitely need ethical approval for this, but probably just institutional and not national since it's a small feasibility study. If we maybe try to survey 30 patients per hub, and then look at the results and then decide on a bigger project. So just to give you an idea of how the questionnaire looks like, draft. So this is actually based on consulting two validated tools. I mentioned this yesterday, SF36 and SF12. So these are general survey tools to look at how people rate their health and well-being. But this one was tweaked, was modified specifically for SSIs. And it asks the patient, my SSI, it made me feel depressed or sad, so they have to rate that. Another question in Kenya, Rwanda, is there a word for depression or sad or is there a standard word or
Expression is
okay? So again, translations. It made me worry about money because if they can't go back to work, it delayed my return to work. It delayed my taking care of my family, affected my normal activities. And then the second part, so this is the different domains of effects of exercise. This second part will look at their knowledge about SSIs. So for example, I was given information about how to take care of my wound at home. I know who to contact if there is an emergency. It is easy for me to travel. So they have to rate how much they agree or disagree with the statement. And then I have family and relatives to take care of me while recovering. So this is the draft. I might add a few more questions. I'm still finalizing the questionnaire, but it should look something like this. It's short. And then the last part is, what's the most difficult thing about having an SSI? So the idea is if they can write and read, they can fill in the forms. If they cannot, then maybe a nurse, a research nurse, or Emmanuel can talk to them and they can give their answers. And then Emmanuel will just write their answers. So that's species, the short survey. Again, it's pilot stages. Any reactions? Any?
I think Prof can help with comments.
What? They ask your comments.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Is it? I think my question is. So these questions aren't final, but do you think it's a good project, or we should just do something else? Or no? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I had asked
Yeah.
the idea from Prof because I know he knows studies and yeah. But for me, I was thinking that categorizing answers like that. Okay, I don't know how different parties will be able to
Okay.
yes the right answer and like the right scale. So that's one. The second, I was thinking that if you have like a focus group discussion. Okay, but
Focus group or CEI group?
the focus group.
A focus group. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
because that's where people will be discussing and argue on one statement.
Okay.
So that cross-validates answers. Because
I see.
here sometimes I feel like as well, the correctness or the the correctness of the answer.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, Sosten. So the plan is, at least this is what I'm thinking and what I've shared with the CEI leads, is to initially have a pilot where we ask maybe 30 patients in each hub, and then we look at the results, we analyze it, and then based on the results, we can then have focus groups where we can maybe look at the meaning of their answers and then maybe expand. But that's a great idea.
So the other thing I
Yeah.
thought, it's actually what Dr. Allen asked, how do you get those patients who got the infection? So it means you must have the source of this information. And for most of our hospitals, some of them, they require the national entities clearance before they can give you
So
information.
So I guess that's my question. If we, for the pilot, for the 30 responses or 30 to 50 responses, if we limit it to this hospital, will you need national ethics or will institutional ethics be appropriate? At least just for this site. Institutional, okay. So, okay. But if we expand to more to the spokes, then we will need national ethics. So, and thank you for your comment. So, I guess this is where CEI input comes in. Sostin, you mentioned that maybe this scale will not work in Rwanda. So, what we could do is we have a translation of this, and we ask people, how would you want to rate your experiences? So, if they say maybe instead of this, a number,
No,
we can do that.
Number will be worse.
Sorry?
Numbers will be worse.
Okay. Okay.
Probably reducing the number of choices.
Oh, okay. Number of choices. Okay.
And the other idea I do not see, so you said, so we wanted to see the experience out of the hospital.
Yeah.
But I can see this, we can actually collect data from the hospital.
Even these ones are
Okay. Also, they seem to be the ones that we have used for Tarot. And
You are replacing the community now. You are not CI.
no,
No, I mean,
we
you
are a community of researchers.
No, that's it. The community of researchers are not part of the CI. Guys, you have to trust the community. You trust their due diligence, their intelligence. They are very smart guys. And you will be surprised. Sometimes you think you know better than them. And you master everything. There you will be surprised.
Yeah, actually, it's what we were discussing. You have to go to them when you have already something.
So you should go with the judge.
Yeah.
And then maybe they will tell you,
Yeah, they
this,
give you feedback.
maybe increase it by 2. We have our own way of grading things. Then listen to them and you grade like they want.
So Emmanuel, no pressure tomorrow. You will talk to them. So yes, is it safe to say that generally you think this is an okay idea, but we just need to maybe improve on the questionnaires by asking community. Yeah. So that's species, and then we have 15 minutes more. So I will give the floor now to Emmanuel to talk about pigeon. Will you use? Oh,
I have to. So, dear Mike, thank you for helping us to understand what CI is. Now, as you were presenting one project, let us also share with you. Okay, hello everyone. Hello?
Hello.
Okay, so let us go through to the Pigeon project. I have summarized the Pigeon project in maybe 3 to 4 slides that will make everyone to understand what it is. And thank you, Mike, for helping us to understand what is CIE and how can we design a project in it. So we have tried to design one project in which we think this project can fit in CIE. So that's why I'm going to summarize this project, then you will tell us if really we can continue in the same way or if we can change something. So Pigeon project, Pigeon, this is an abbreviation which comes from the cohort 1. The cohort 1 you see improving surgical care outcomes through the active involvement of community in Rwanda. Community health workers. So there is missing word there. So really in our country, community health workers have contributed a lot in terms of helping the community.
they are treating or they are helping in different conditions. We can enumerate them like malaria, they are pneumonia, they are treating pneumonia, they are treating diarrhea in children under 5 years, if I'm not wrong, even malnutrition. So they are contributing a lot in the healthcare sector. So we were thinking, what can community health workers help in terms of surgical care? So if we say surgical care, we say before the patient is operated, when the patient is being operated, and when the patient is in post-operative period. So what can community health workers contribute in terms of helping those patients? That's why we call it surgical care, to include those three parts: pre-operative, intraoperative, and post-operative. So this is how the idea comes. Then we try to think about this project. And then can I go to the next slide? So this is the team. As I was saying, the project has been designed in our hub. Next, I can read myself. This is a background. What I am saying, that called community workers are contributing a lot in the healthcare sector. So the main objective, the aim of this project is to develop and implement a comprehensive intervention for community workers to improve surgical care outcomes in Rwanda. So that's why I was saying that we don't know what the community can perform
Yes.
in terms of helping patients pre, intra, post-operative. So the aim of this project, or this study, is to develop and implement a comprehensive intervention. So the specific objectives, I think maybe I cannot read one by one. You'll see them there, except saying that this project will be done in 4 phases, whereby the first phase will consist of exploring the community perception towards the active community involvement, community workers involvement, and identifying the real needs as felt by the community in terms of research and surgical healthcare delivery. So, in this phase, we think that it's better to get their perception and to assess their knowledge about surgical care. What do they understand if we say surgical care, and how do they perceive those terms? So we don't know how they can respond. So that once
I have a question.
Yes.
What's the Kinyarwanda word for surgery? Is there
Surgery in Kinyarwanda, say kubagwa.
is that pretty standard?
Yeah. So this term also, if you use this term, maybe we will talk this after. But we have experienced some challenges when we were approaching the
Really? Okay.
and using this term in Kinyarwanda kuba.
Okay.
You say this term, there are some people who may be like feeling not comfortable because they fear this term. So we're trying to see which proper term can be used. So the first, actually, we want to pilot to do this project by starting with the small or in 2 district hospitals, not in the entire country.
Yeah.
In the first phase, we are targeting to start with the Kibogora and the Kibagabaga district hospitals.
Yeah.
Why? We have chosen Kibagabaga as urban region. Kibagabaga will stand for urban region, then Kibogora will stand.
Can we go a little bit one slide before we go to the methodology? Maybe what I want from Mike to help us to understand our sequence of events and what we think that should be done. So actually we designed this and I was happy to see the continuum of levels in terms of CIE. That one is to be part of all the levels. So we think we're gonna consult the community. So it's a kind of second layer, second level. Then we consult them, it would go that kind of qualitative research, asking them their perspectives, what they think about this and that. So a consultative analysis. Then we go a little bit higher by designing with them an intervention that we design together. We go to another layer later that we are going to implement that intervention together. So that's how I want it to be organized.
Yes, then after we evaluate the outcome of that intervention. Do you still have a question?
No.
Oh,
It's very clear. Thank you.
Okay. So now we can go to the methodology. As I was saying, this we will start with two district hospitals, Chibagabaga and Chibogora. And the first phase, of course, will consist of assessing the community perception on the active involvement of community health workers in surgical care. Then, after assessing their knowledge, we came up with some intervention which come as a priority for them. In phase 2, we target to start implementing, to intervene with that intervention. Then we see, as Professor Faustin was saying, we will design that intervention together, as this will come from their response in phase 1. Then we design intervention according to the findings that we have obtained. Then we see together how we can implement this intervention. Then in phase 3, we see how we can expand in a large region. So the second phase is what I was saying. The first phase was that one. Then the second phase will be like identifying and implementing the intervention, while the third one will be scaling up the intervention that has been performed in 2 district hospitals for the entire country. Then for fourth phase will be like evaluating and monitoring phase. If we really we are sure that this intervention has been successful, so we continue monitoring the intervention. So this is how the region is designed. And then ethical, of course, we have requested ethical approvals. At this level, we have all ethical approvals needed. So Chibagabaga, Chibogora, even Ministry of Health, we have ethical approval from there, and the University of Rwanda. So we have more ethical approval needed. So we are planning to start starting this first phase. But before we start the first phase, we have tried to contact the community health workers to ask them the input for the questionnaire that will be.
So CEI input.
Yes.
Okay.
CEI input. We contacted. We have 2 sessions. One took place at Chibagabaga, another one took place at Chibogora.
Okay.
Where we meet community workers. Then we discuss, we present them the project, we present them the aim of this project, and we ask them the input from the questionnaire. Do you think if we ask this question, will it be a good manner to ask this question? Do you suggest anything? So they have provided inputs, then we incorporated those inputs in our questionnaire, then we make what we call final.
So I haven't seen the input from your previous meetings. So if you can show that to me, maybe during the trip to Kibogora we can talk about it. I have a question though. How do you plan to assess the baseline knowledge of the community healthcare workers about pre, intra, and post-operative?
So we have a set of questions that how the data collection
we repeat that.
That's gonna be a capstone, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's a kind of knowledge that practice kind of.
Okay.
And in that case, we are trying to see how we can train community health workers themselves so that they can correct that, they can help us to correct that, they can be able.
I have a question about, so that assessment, is it like an examination that they have to, a written, like how will you assess their knowledge?
The knowledge.
Is it like a,
This
will
is
you ask them
this
questions
will be,
about?
Yeah.
Actually, I did not say this will be exploratory sequential design. The design is this will be exploratory sequential mixed methods. So we are planning to combine quantitative and qualitative. So for qualitative, we are having interview guide, and we are planning to train healthcare workers how to collect data in terms of qualitative data collection. If we follow them, we assist them during the data collection, then they collect data as they have been trained. Then for quantitative also, we think that the community health workers will continue to go through.
Yeah, so this is my question. I'm not really sure if this is applicable to the culture, because you know how your community healthcare workers might react. But if you assess their knowledge of, let's say, wound infections, and it appears like it's a test, if they don't know the answers, do you think that might make them fearful of the project? That's, I don't know if
I get you, and actually that's not the way. So we are not going to turn them into scientists. It's not like a scientific questions people are asking. No. They are asking what they think they should be done to involve them into surgery.
Okay.
Not to ask them how do you assess a wound. No.
Oh, okay.
No, we are not yet at that level.
Okay.
If they tell us what you can do is to train us to be able to assess wounds, that we will train them.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying.
And
Which
I will
will
share
most
with you
likely be the case.
I don't know. And I will share with you the questionnaire.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is how the project is designed. So now, I think if anyone has a question or concern, as we are knowledgeable in terms of CI, you can maybe advise us.
I have two comments actually. One is that we can discuss this a bit later, maybe when Mike have an idea of what we call community health workers. You may advise better. Say this group of people, this can work, this can. That's one. Second, I was going to ask, because we are going to start Pigeon, the speeches. How can we combine more?
Oh.
And run both at the same time?
Good question. I think it would be good. So species would be for a survey for people who either have or have had SSIs. I'm trying to define the inclusion criteria, so I'm still not.
We are thinking in this way.
Yes. Okay.
Because he's saying we are going to train community workers or whoever to do data collection.
Yes.
So why don't we train them to do data collection for speech?
Oh. That's a good idea.
And then we, as Pigeon, our job is to train them to do something with us. Research-wise, because this is CIE. Then that the thing they are collecting for is another product, which is speech.
That's a good idea. I think what you could, for example, you could train them how